be here with you this evening. As complicated as our times are for everybody, it's different, but it's all a little bit different than we might ever have imagined. This is one of my favorite times of the month where we can all get together for the front porch, and any other time we can find our way to get connected and be connected and just feel the strength of what it means to be in this organization and be together as a group of men, finding your way forward and making a difference in our neighborhoods and our communities. So thank you for everything that you're doing, both for yourself and for all those around you. I appreciate you for that, and it really, really brightens all of us up in this work. I'm going to turn it over now to Captain Jodytude to bring us into the program. And so, Jim, would you please bless us in?
Thank you, Paul. Men, first, before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm sitting in my house that sits on land that was once stewarded by the Lenape, Susquehannock, the Shawnee, and Iroquois tribes of the indigenous peoples. I give thanks for their sacrifice and the blood and the loss that allows me to sit here today. I invite you to take a deep breath and just breathe in, fill your lungs, close your eyes. And as you exhale, let out any stress or anxiety or things that may distract you from being present here this evening. I invite you to take another breath. Breathe in the spirit of harmonious cooperation and let out anything that may be in the way of you being present here this evening. And on your third breath, I invite you to be mindful of what your mission is. And breathe in and let it out. Keep your eyes closed. And imagine how you are living your mission today and where areas you may want to improve or live your mission in a different way. We say that we create a world where men act on our individual and shared responsibility for the future of humanity. And we support men on a path of emotional maturity, spiritual awareness, and deepening community. And so take one more breath and see how that mission that I just read, the MKP mission, lines up with your mission. And then let your final breath out. And when you're present, open your eyes and join the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, very, very much. I'm going to invite Ed to share the context about the meeting that's about to happen and a little bit about Carmil. But before I do that, Ed, I just want you all to know that what the Front Porch is all about is keeping us connected and having you see the things that are coming forward to help us grow in our own lives. The programming that's being delivered by MKP USA is growing, and it's stronger and stronger all the time. This is a particular program that I've done, and I'm grateful for it having been in my life. So with that, Ed, why don't you introduce the program?
Thanks, Paul, and welcome everybody. Carmil Surritt is a guy I've known as long as I've been in MKP, and he is the chair, or as we say, the lead link of the curriculum committee, which is the committee that's responsible for so many of the new programs we've been rolling out, online programs and training of certification of leaders and all sorts of things like that. And some time ago, about a year, I guess now, Carmil came to me and said, you know, I'm doing this thing called Core Map, and I really think you'd like it. Well, I'm a psychologist. I consider myself a recovering psychologist. And I'm certified in Myers-Briggs and DISC and all kinds of other assessments. And I thought, well, I'll do it as a favor. That's kind of how I got into MKP. Now that I think about it, I'll do it. Carmil asked me to, I'll do it. And it was really remarkable because, as Jung pointed out, when we do the Myers-Briggs or the DISC or a lot of these things, we often get a picture of who we've been culturally conditioned to be, who we've learned to be. And what I got doing the core map that really surprised me, it really put me back on my heels and made me a big fan, was a real picture of who I think I really am behind the mask. So we're going to be offering core map as a program, and I'm sure Carmil will tell you about that. But I'm really happy to have him here tonight and to have him present what I think is a really nice piece of work that dovetails nicely with the work we do as the men's work we do in MKP. So Carmil, I will turn it over to you, and then I'll come back at the end and give some thoughts. Go ahead.
Thanks, Ed and Paul, and thanks everybody for showing up. I got introduced to Core Map several years ago by Royce Herndon, and some of you may know that name. He was around the project for quite a while and passed earlier this year. And he kept telling me about this core map tool. And I said, well, what's it like? He says, well, it's sort of like Myers-Briggs, but it's different. It's sort of like DISC, but it's different. It's sort of like a lot of those assessment tools. And I said, well, what makes it different? He says, well, you got to do it. And so I eventually did it, and my wife did it. And I was immediately inspired. As many times as I had done Myers-Briggs, they always came out different. One time I'd be an INFP and then an INTJ, and then it would shift around a lot. And so that wasn't really usable for me as information. I needed something that I could sink my teeth into to give me to set my compass. And a little bit further down the line, I got a chance to do my core map with Royce, and then introduced to Dr. Sherry Buffington. And she's the one that invented this over 40 years ago now. And there's been 100,000 people that have done this assessment. It's a facilitated assessment, and it's for the exact reason Ed was sharing. Is we've been so conditioned as men to fall into the thinking styles. And we believe so much that the feminine is conditioned to the feeling style, and that they're more sensitive and more relationship based, more greater ability to connect and so forth. And what Dr. Buffington found over all of these assessments is that the balance between thinking and feeling types in men is actually 50-50. Although our culture and our upbringing and our style pushes us more to the thinking side of things. And she also found for women that it's equally 50-50. The problem with women being conditioned strictly to the feeling side is when they come from the thinking, more dominant, more outspoken, more driven, we have a lot of derogatory labels that we put on women when they express their power and their desire to get things done. So first of all, it was kind of a neat tool, neat experience. And then as I got a little bit further into it, I saw, and I'm going to screen share here in a second, that there's more to it. And if you can see the screen on the bottom left, is if that would be my dominant type or dominant style. And when I'm in my dominant style, it takes very little effort to get a huge amount of energy return. And if I'm in my secondary style, it's a little more effort still getting a huge amount of energy in return. Typically, though, I'm functioning from a backup style. And for me, that was a more detailed roles I was in. I was in financial planning, I was in engineering, and I couldn't understand why Mondays were the worst day of the week. And I came home like I'd been run over by a steamroller every day. It just was exhausting. Well, it turns out that this in my core map is my organizer. The organizer is a thinking part of my brain. It's in the back of my brain, more along the senses, actual 5 physical senses. And it's where I was conditioned to be. I was good in math and science. It was where I got my best grades. So obviously that would be the career I would choose. And yet I was exhausted and depleted. I was generally sick with something, and found out that that's my backup style. That's not my normal style or preference. The dormant style for myself was the relator style. That was feeling back quadrant of my right side of my brain. And that part was how to get along, how to put the priority on relationship. Again, took a lot of effort for a little bit of return, and mostly what I got out of it was frustration, because it was just abnormal to me. So the way it was explained to me is, if I was conditioned in a culture that was everyone used their left hand, I would learn to go through my life and do everything I needed to do left-handed. However, if I got an opportunity to use my right hand, I would much more quickly pick up using a phone or typing or opening jars or doing whatever to do, because that would be my more natural style of functioning. So what Core Map did was it helped me put the 4 types of personality in my normal type of order, the way that I function best. And I've done this for about 50 people in the project, 50 men in the project. Several of them are on this call. And it's pretty rare that a type 1 personality assessment, which is the DISC, it's who I think I am, and a type 2 assessment of how I show up in the world, it's very rare that those are in agreement, those are in alignment. Matter of fact, the statistics are that 84% of the time, we're out of alignment, we're incongruent. And that's why I felt this is so powerful, is because the people that I've done this for often will see themselves 180 degrees out of their natural way of being in the world. And when they get the opportunity to see through the conditioning and the corrective parents and the way the school system functioned and how they were supposed to be, and allow themselves permission to be themselves, the change is dramatic. It's amazing what occurs. So one of the tools that I use is when we look at core behaviors. In a core map, these dots show us how the person is functioning. In the light area, they'll show me that this is a stress-free day. And how does this person show up in the world? What does he do first? Well, the 4 types are the commander, which is thinking, intuitive, big picture. The organizer, which is more detail oriented. Their number 1 objective is to get things right. You may know people like that. And the The yellow is the entertainer. That's the front feeling side, big picture personality type. And then the relator is the rear right brain. It's the person that their number one goal in life is for everyone to get along. So the feeling side is the right side of the brain. The thinking side is the left side of the brain. The front part of the brain is external, usually seen as extroverted. And the back part of the brain is usually where the introverts function from. All right, here's what I'm talking about. This actually was a chart about the types, but it turns out to be a map of your brain. So the extrovert is your frontal lobe, front part of the brain. The introverts are functioning from the hippocampus and the back part of the brain. Left side thinking, right side feeling. Most men are conditioned to be the commander or the organizer. They're either designed or conditioned to get it done, accomplish, get a task completed, and they'll use whatever tools they need to get that done. Oftentimes it's bullying when it's done in a negative way. The organizer, their stress levels, you can tell an organizer is getting stressed out is because the perfectionist comes online. Not only do they have to get it right, but it has to be perfect. And they can't hear anything other than the specific details to get the job exact, specific. So men, like I said, men are traditionally set up to be on the thinking side of the brain. And when women show up on the thinking side of the brain, that's where we have a lot of derogatory comments and labels, as we talked about earlier. On the feeling side of the brain, we have the entertainer and the relator. The entertainer, their number one thing is to get seen and heard. When they're not seen and heard, the drama begins. They will escalate the behavior, they will cause a commotion, they will create chaos until they're seen or heard. The relator, down here at the bottom, the back part of the brain, is traditionally what most people would say is the feminine. It's about the relationship. It's more compassionate, it's more nurturing, it's more sensitive, it's more aware, it's reading more body language, it's more more conducive to caring for the person in a holistic way, and again from a feeling and sensing nature. Why is this important? Well, when I'm functioning from commander and I'm actually a relator, I'm having a tough time communicating at all with you. Same as the opposite is true. The commander comes into the office and says, it's Monday morning at 8 o'clock. How are you doing? And the relator walks into the room and says, oh, how are you? How was your weekend? And the commander says, weekend, hell, it's 5 after 8. We got work to do. What's wrong with you? And then the relator gets all their feelings hurt, goes back to their cubicle and sits there for the next 2 days, angry, thinking that boss is such a jerk. I don't want to deal with this guy. The same is true between the organizer and the entertainer. The entertainer wants to be seen, wants to get along, wants to be connected, wants to be heard, shows up into a meeting. They want to be involved in the meeting, and the organizer is only concerned with the agenda. The specifics, get this done, it's got to be right, that's it. So those people are going to have a natural difficult time connecting to each other. And what core map is one, how can I connect from my authentic self? But secondly, if I can ask a few questions and I can identify your normal type, your normal way of being, then I can build connection with anyone at any time. So it's pretty vital right now, particularly with the environment that the leadership faces in mankind, with what I see in social media and what I see on the news, is people are automatically opposed. We're already stressed out. We're already having difficulty in connecting. And it's really easy under stress to be even more opposed, more diametrically go to our corners. And Core Map allows me, when I'm listening to someone say that they need specifics, they want to get it right. And if I go to them and I say, okay, what is it you actually need? What is the information that I can provide for you? If I address that organizer's needs first, now he can trust me, even though I may act differently, but I can build that bridge to build that connection. Same with the relator. If the relator wants to get along and I go straight to the topic, I go straight to the project, I've alienated that person and I've taken away their creativity, I've taken away their imagination, I've taken away their loyalty, I've taken everything out of the picture because I've started off by not building trust. And if I'm going to work with the relator and I go to the relator, and we have a few of them on the lock, then I can address and talk to them about them, their family, how they're feeling. And we do this when we check in. We address the feeling side as MKP brothers most of the time when we check in. We're including the feelers on the right side of the brain. And then, so this is an important piece. And one of the things that I can show you is what happens when someone has their core map done. And this map over here shows someone who did their core map. And this man, young man, was high in his entertainer, positive entertainer. And then as this day got stressful, his commander would show up, and whenever these are right next to each other, he's very reactive. So I said, hey, you know, when you need to get things done, how's it go? Oh man, stressed out, anger, temper tantrums, fits, all kinds of problems. And then he tries to get along. He goes over to his relator and he tries to get along. That's his second thing he tries to do. And after that, it's negative relator, the third one here, negative organizer, negative entertainer. His day is shot. The second stress hits, the day was over. So I know this person really well. And at this point, he'd failed out of college 3 times. He smoked pot nonstop, video gamed to all days of the morning, couldn't get along with any family members, and couldn't hold a job over 2.5 weeks. 2 weeks later, after having this core map, positive entertainer, positive commander of getting things done, positive relator of getting organized, getting along, and then positive organizer of getting things done. All the spacing is healthy. I can report to you now that he completely gave up drinking, completely gave up smoking, went back to school, graduated last semester with a 4.0, has been working in the same job for over 1.25 years and is their top employee, and has repaired all of his relationships with those around him, including his family and stepdad. What changed? He was allowed to be himself and understand who he was. And I see this all the time. This man is only 23 years old. I've seen it happen for men in the project. I've done their core map that are 70. One guy told me that the best thing he ever did was to do his MKP weekend, his NWTA. And the second thing he ever did was to see himself in his core map. So it's an amazing tool. Royce tried for over a decade to bring it to mankind. There's another man out of South Carolina that's done hundreds of these for Mankind Brothers over the years and called me as soon as it was approved. There's another man out of Texas, Mark Schwartz, who's also a certified core map facilitator. For me to get to mission, I have to first know who I am before I can answer why am I here. And I see so many men that show up in the men's work that struggle and they're frustrated and they lack direction and they lack clarity. And we do their core map and they go, oh, wow, I'm not that guy. I'm that guy. Wow. So that's an overview of core map. I'd love to answer questions and see if anything's popped up and maybe get some feedback from some of the guys that have done it. So I can stop screen share. Any questions or insights or about this?
Well, implicitly you said you have to be a certified core map facilitator. So I'm assuming there's an exchange of dollars. And how is that? Is this now an MKP thing, or is this a call up Carmil thing?
No, this is an MKP affiliate. It was actually approved a year ago, July. And MKP gets a percentage off of the two packages that we have. One is simply a core map, and Mankind gets a percentage. The other is a core map with a follow-up coaching session in 2 weeks, and then a follow-up coaching session with this progress report so that they can see how they've changed, how they've grown, how they've adapted their behavior. So there's two different packages, and it's in the catalog. So you're asking me for price. The basic package is $275, and the deluxe package is $495, Bill. Yeah, Carrie.
So in the example that you gave, when the man found out what his new core map was like, was there any other kind of activity or things that he did in order to, change his direction? Or is it just simply the awareness of that difference was all he needed?
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Great question. It comes with a guidebook to give you more information on the types. And sometimes men will read that for the first 10 days to kind of give themselves permission to be more in a certain type, more to act more in a certain way. I find a lot of guys make the change even if they don't read a single word of it. And it's the analogy that Royce used to use is kind of like the ugly duckling, the story of the ugly duckling. It looked in the water and it saw it was a swan. It doesn't say in the last chapter, then began swan lessons. It just became itself to be who it was. And that's kind of how this works. It's just kind of sees right through the programming. And when I get permission to be me, I start being that way. So I know Boyson's on here. He's had it. John, you want to give some feedback? I know you have a lot of background in this.
Sure. Yeah, I was reluctant. I've used every diagnostic tool, I've been doing stuff like this for 30 plus years. And so I resisted it first, and then I finally agreed to be assessed and supported in this way. And I can affirm that it was a valid typing for me. And then Carmil made some suggestions and I acted on those. I don't think it's a secret that I sit in the commander quadrant, but when my commander gets a little stressed, I start going into entertainer and then organizer, and I get to be a handful. I find it as useful as Myers-Briggs, as useful as archetypes, as useful as Enneagram, and I use all of that stuff to help me understand myself and others. So I enjoyed I don't know if I sunk 2 or 3 or 4 hours into spending time with it, plus some time because I sit in curriculum to hear about it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, Larry.
Larry? Hi. I've seen this a couple of times before in my life too. The first time was as part of a workshop series that was, I think, out of California called The Gift, and it later became Excellence in Education for Living Seminars. And just a couple of different, the names changed a little bit, but basically the same concept. Then I went to work, fast forward about 20 years, went to work for a place that did a test called Emerge Genetics. And they had the same concept of breaking into these 4 quadrants, but the quadrants had more to do, the reason for doing it had more to do with everybody being on board on a team, taking it so that they would know how to get along with each other. So I just wanted to find out if the interactivity post understanding is part of the deal here, that the excitement about it.
Yeah, it definitely works in a team. We haven't used it in Mankind as a team other than individual knowledge of the guys I'm working with in curriculum and in my I group and other places that I land. I use this tool all the time. And one of the largest coaching organizations, Pathways, actually uses it, and they modified it to match their same color scheme that they have. But they have a lot of facilitators that use this tool. So it can be used in a lot of different ways. We probably won't use it the way the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders use it. So we'll finally find some other way to use it. Cool.
I have another question, Carmel, and excuse me if I don't want to sound uncouth or whatever, but you know, when I did the YWTA last August, and when I did Next Step, there was all this talk about spiral dynamics, and that was like so intellectual. I mean, maybe I'm just cut from a raw stone or something, but is this like something a person can wrap themselves around easily, or is it like a 1,000-page study?
Yeah, good question.
It's easier than spiral. I
Yeah,
interrupted it.
spiral dynamics. Yeah, the main manual is about 27 pages. It's a pretty simple way to understand all the types and how they interact. There's a leadership guide, how different types of leaders interact. In Mankind, we typically see the commander as the only type of leader. That's what we see on weekends for the most part. But the relators and the entertainers and organizers also make great leaders. Where this fits, if you've had a chance to take the integral class that's online, that's a great class. And it talks in the 4th part about types. So Enneagram is a typing method, Myers-Briggs is a typing method, and Core Map is a typing method. Meaning, how do I understand my primary, secondary, backup way of functioning and within myself, and so that I can understand it within you, and so that I can connect and work with you cleanly, as opposed to having to puff up to get my way or to manipulate as many of us do to try to get our needs met. So much easier than spiral dynamics, and it definitely fits more with types and integral.
I would be happy to add just a little bit, if that's okay. Bill, I'm about the furthest person from an intellectual type as there is in this room, I'm sure. I did not find it complicated at all, and I did find it useful. There's a large number of questions that get you where you're going to go. And I didn't find that complicated at all. I found it intriguing to understand how so many questions seem to be asked in so many different ways, but I don't know if I interpreted that wrong or right, but it was helpful, and it's been really helpful for me. I've worked with Carmil 3 or 4 different times since I've been in this role. simply because when I got in places that I felt uncomfortable or felt like I was in a tough place, I wanted to see how that matched and what was going on in myself, and that each time it showed it different. I was curious whether you're going to put me up there when you did that. But I was pleasantly surprised each time to find out that I was actually not doing as bad a job as I thought I was, and I wasn't as like out there as I thought it was. So that was helpful for me, and it affirmed me to really believe and know who I was, not just think of who I was. So that was really useful. And thanks for that question, Bill. I'm glad to know there's another person in the room and isn't overly intellectual. That's good.
Randy, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks. So as I understand Myers-Briggs, which is the only thing I actually remember, I did an Enneagram and then promptly forgot my type, and then can't find it on my computer, which is driving me crazy. But as I understand it, it's a preference, and that gets confusing to lots of people to like explain it because it's not immutable. I can flip back and forth. Is preference the right way to describe this core thing?
Yeah, preference or style. One of the challenges that Dr. Buffington discovered working with Myers-Briggs is they used J as judging. And judging isn't actually a thinking style. It's the scale between my thinking and feeling way of interpreting information. So I'm either thinking or I'm feeling. Judging is where am I on that scale? Am I closer to in the middle, or am I way over here, or am I way over here? And then perceiving is another mistake based on how they interpreted Jung's work, is either I'm looking at the big picture, intuiting from my prefrontal cortex, or I'm sensing from the back part of my brain. And what Myers-Briggs said was perceiving was sensing, and it's not. It's the same scale between, am I seeing big picture or am I looking at it from internal? And that's part of how she discovered it. She was working with an insurance company and doing all their new hires and getting the Myers-Briggs results and interviewing the person sitting across from them and going, these don't match. That's not who's on this paper. So that's what started 20 years of work to come up with this tool.
Thanks.
Hey, I got a question. And this is going to be maybe hard to do, but maybe between Paul and John and Carmil, you guys could give me some examples. I'm trying to grasp this, and I want to know what it would be like to have my core map, like right here in my hands, and it's Saturday morning, and I'm going to decide what to do with the day, or it's, I'm about to go into a big meeting at work, and just sort of curious how I might behave differently if I had this information, which versus right now when I don't. I mean, I could probably come up with a guess. But what's an example?
Ed.
Yeah, for me, I actually had the privilege of having Dr. Buffington and Carmil go over mine with me, and she pointed out that my like John, you won't be surprised to hear that my first home is Commander, but that was, stop laughing, Davies. But that was really went through all my other areas, and I could just relax into that. I didn't have to push it, and I didn't have to tell myself that I shouldn't be that way or that I should be that way. I could just relax into that's where I've always lived. It wasn't like a big change. It was a big acceptance for me, but I saw Boysen had something as well. Go ahead, B.
Well, So for me, here's the analogy that I'll draw between MKP work. So there's this thing, right? I know when I'm in shadow when I start doing XYZ, and the core map has really helped me say, I know when I'm not operating from a healthy type when I start doing X, Y, and Z. I know when I downshift into hardcore organizer and start doing a whole lot of stuff that's out of where I naturally want to be, it's usually because I'm stressed. And it doesn't help relieve my stress. It makes me more stressed to downshift into that unhealthy behavior. So when I return back to where I'm most comfortable in entertainer commander, my creative work, that's when I am on. That's when if I go to writing instead of fucking spreadsheets, I'm going to be a happier person. So that's how it's helped me.
Thanks for letting me have a question. And, supposing we've run a business or we've worked for a corporation, global corporation, and, we as you mentioned with the Myers-Briggs or the True Colors or any other of profiling tests that we may have taken, how does core map break through the accumulated bias of, say, how, assuming we go through a battery of questions, we relate some experiences and how we would make our responses. How is it that the core map can break through all of that bias and get to the authentic self? I think it would be very powerful. I'll probably try it, but I'm just curious on how it breaks through all of that bias.
Yeah, great question. As a facilitator, I'm trained to not tell you what I believe your type to be. As we go through the different scenarios and you're reading them and checking them, you're the one that finally says, oh my gosh, that's me. So I'm not convincing, persuading, challenging, doing anything to twist your arm into believing that you're this one person. As a facilitator, when I look at a part one, let me show you part one here.
But even how do we avoid putting our own bias into it? If you've 10, 20, 30 years experience doing what you're doing, I mean, you've been conditioned into operating a certain way for a good amount of time. And we desperately want to know our authentic true self, but how do we avoid putting the bias into the responses that we would give for core map?
So we go through a series of questions and we give you a series of choices to make. And so we're asking, so what got you in trouble when you were little? What got you praise? We're allowing you to kind of uncover, oh yeah, well, I did enjoy doing that when I was younger, and then I quit doing it because of this. And I like that boy, but yeah, I got really embarrassed by that, or I got picked on because I acted that way, or I did that. So you kind of soften into it. Now, any of those higher developed, like if you were an organizer, for example, and you were really highly developed in organizer, but that really wasn't your natural first, second, or third type, that's a strength. That's an accumulated strength.
Yeah, especially for people mid-career, late career. We've been conditioned to operate a certain way for a long time, and now we have this opportunity to learn the authentic self. But I just want to be sure that I can get to it. So what I think I'm hearing, though, is that the questions may not come from completely an occupational kind of a battery.
Yeah, they definitely don't. They come from all different phases of life. But if you have a strength you've developed, I find a lot of men have a really high developed relator and they're not relator. That's a strength. They can use that wherever they need to. We're not going to condition them out of it.
Right.
Yeah, it's still their strengths. Yeah. Ed?
Yeah, Carmil, I just wanted to add, it's a great question, Scott, because it's Myers-Briggs, DISC, any of them, you got this problem. And if the instrument's well designed, basically the questions are set up to foil that. Somebody said, I think it was, I can't remember who it was now, that said that, the questions were asked, like several different questions asked different ways. That's there to get past your defenses. This happens to be a very well-designed instrument, and I wouldn't worry about that. As long as you're aware that you might do that and kind of make sure you're telling the truth, your truth, it'll get you.
It's harder to hack than the disc. I can hack the Myers-Briggs now. Tell me what type you want me to be. I can hack it.
Yeah.
You think you can.
And the type 1 is how I see myself, and type 2 is how I show up. Usually you would think you would be one of those two. And oftentimes when I facilitate, the guy is neither type 1 nor type 2 of who they think they are, and they're a third type altogether. And that's when the eyes get about this big at the end of the facilitation. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been that way for 50 years, and that's not my natural way of being. Holy crap. It's pretty fun.
Carmil, you have one more question hand raised. You'll take that and then wrap it up for us. It's Mike.
Oh, there it is. Oh, hi, Mike.
Hi, Carmil. I was particularly attracted to this by the kind of Johari's window type of thing, is the difference between the way people perceive themselves and the way others perceive them. It looks like a very rich vein, however you approach it or however you get at it. I'd say my favorite scene from the movie Young Frankenstein is when the Marty Feldman fella says very empathically to the hunchback, says, you know, I'm quite a accomplished surgeon. I could help you with that hump. And the Hunchback of Notre Dame looks right at him and says, "What hump?" So that's sort of an entertaining way to get at this. But I think I and everybody else have this challenge of how we see ourselves differing from how others see us. At the same time, though, when you were speaking about the limitations of Myers-Briggs, which I've done, and DISC, which I've done, I know that their statistical evidence around validity and reliability is much better than you portrayed. And you sort of offered your personal experience with Myers-Briggs as a, you know, disconfirming evidence. And I must say, I didn't find a subjective individual case disconfirming of the huge body of statistics. And I'm willing to say any of these things is going to be an oversimplification and going to be imperfect to some degree. But I wanted to give you the chance to say a little more about the reliability and validity on this. And even with the one case, I mean, to have a young man have a 2-week transformational experience sounds wonderful to me, but it doesn't sound significant to me. So I wanted to invite you to do a little more of what a Myers-Briggs NT would find as validating and persuasive around this particular instrument that it chooses.
Yeah, Mike, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go one better for you. And that is, I'm going to send you the validation study that was done on this, that compares the two and compares the data and research that comes out of Myers-Briggs. And you can go through the whole study. I recommend the summary, that's more digestible. Sure. The whole report is even tough for me to get through, but I will definitely get your email and send you the whole validation.
But it gives the position you were giving, that this is different and better in some ways.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question. Great question. Cool.
So why don't you close it up, Carmil, and then turn it over to Ed, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for letting me share this. I have obviously a lot of passion for it, and I've seen a lot of great things happen from it. There's been one person out of 50 that I've done that didn't agree with it. So I'll consider that pretty successful. If I got 100, then I know something was wrong. So I'll go with one that didn't agree with it. Thank you. Reach out to me. I'd be glad to share it with you. And I just know if you guys are writing in the chat, I'll copy the chat. And if you have any questions at all, just fire them off to me and I'll be glad to share that info.
Thanks, Carmil. Thanks. Really well done. I want to say, I've worked with all these instruments for a very long time. I've used them in companies and in clinical work all over the world. They're all valid in their way. None of them is the truth, but they're keys to finding your truth. And I found the core map particularly useful in that regard. So I appreciate your presenting it, Carmil. I appreciate everyone's being here and your attention. And I'm going to ask Paul a question. Paul, what's next for the Chair's Front Porch?
Chairs, thanks, Ed. Next Chair's Front Porch is Words Matter on the 1st of next month. Carmil will come back and return, but he'll also be here with Paul Newell. Paul Newell will be part of the presentation next time. And I'm looking forward to that and hope that you'll join us then. I want to close now with just appreciating Carmil for not only this presentation, but for what he's doing in the curriculum right now. Curriculum is on fire. We're creating lots and lots of programming from people out in our community and also inside of our leadership are bringing programming together on a regular basis. I also want to really thank Boyson for what he plays as a role in this. It's huge. Carmil and Boyson are side by side in putting this together in this particular moment in time so that we can, again, continue our growth, continue our connection, and continue what we're here to do in terms of changing the world and ourselves all at the same time. The other piece I want to close with is what I'm noticing all around MKP, which is making it different than what I see in some other places. I'm really seeing us living in a place of curiosity and possibility. It really, really makes a difference, and I'm seeing the difference that it makes because we're not stuck. We're moving forward. We're creating a new dimension to the Mankind Project. We're adding to the goodness that we have and the greatness that we're becoming. And so thank you to all the men, all of you in this audience today for asking the questions, searching the different things that need to happen in your own life and understanding what's going on. It's a pleasure to be in this role for me. And I'm blessed by you and all that you give and all that you are. It is, and you are making a difference. So good evening, and thank you for showing up, and we hope to see you on the 1st for Words Matter. Thanks again, everybody.